The jacket wasn't mine. That's what started it all. Just a simple mix-up at the gym, the kind of thing that happens to people every day. I'd been going to Thompson's Fitness for 15 years. Same routine, same locker, same habit of hanging my navy windbreaker on the same hook. Nothing special about that Thursday night in October, except I was tired, real tired, after a long shift fixing wiring at the Carson building downtown. I showered, dressed, and grabbed what I thought was my jacket from the hook. Didn't even look at it. Why would I? Some habits are just automatic after decades of repetition. I nodded at Joe at the front desk, like always, walked out to my truck, and headed home to Linda. We'd been married 32 years. Met her when I was 26 and she was 23, both of us young and full of dreams. Some came true, some didn't. No kids, couldn't have them. But we built a decent life. I worked my way up from apprentice to master electrician, and she went from receptionist to office manager at a dental practice. We had our routines, our favorite shows, our weekend traditions. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. At least that's what I thought. I pulled into our driveway, the one with the crack I kept meaning to fill, and hit the garage door opener. Only then, sitting in my idling truck, did I reach into the jacket pocket for my house keys and realized something was off. The fabric felt different, smoother, more expensive. The color was navy, sure, but this wasn't my $40 Walmart special. This was something else. And in the pocket, instead of my keychain with the bottle opener and the worn leather tab, I found an unfamiliar set of keys with a luxury car fob, a receipt, and a small folded note. I sat there for a full minute, engine running, just staring at these foreign objects in my hand. It was such a small thing, grabbing the wrong jacket. But sometimes the smallest things can tear your whole world apart. The garage door hung open, waiting. The lights were on inside, meaning Linda was home. Everything looked exactly the same as it had for years, as it had that morning when I kissed her goodbye. But something in my gut told me nothing would ever be the same again. I just didn't know how right I was. I killed the engine and examined the items from the pocket more carefully. The keys were attached to a BMW fob. Someone with money, clearly. The receipt was from Castellano's, one of those fancy Italian places downtown where you need reservations weeks in advance. Linda and I had gone there once for our 25th anniversary. The bill had hurt for weeks afterward. This receipt showed dinner for two. Appetizers, steaks, a bottle of wine that cost more than I make in half a day, and 2 desserts. Total, $287.43, plus a $60 tip, and it was dated yesterday. Then there was the note, folded into a tight square. I opened it with fingers that had suddenly gone clumsy. A phone number written in neat handwriting, and below it, "Call me when you're alone." L, just the letter. Linda's initial, but the final item made my stomach drop like I was in a free-falling elevator. A credit card, platinum. Not mine, I've got basic blue. This one had my wife's name embossed on it, Linda Mercer. My mind scrambled for explanations. Linda had never mentioned going to Castellanos. When I'd called her last night around 7, she'd said she was working late, catching up on insurance paperwork. She'd sounded rushed, distracted, said she'd grab something from the deli on the way home. I slipped everything back into the pocket and finally got out of the truck. My knees felt stiff, uncooperative. At 58, I'd started feeling my age in the mornings and after long days on my feet. But this was different. This was like my body was moving through concrete while my brain raced ahead. I took the 3 steps up to the garage entrance, plastic grocery bags from last week's shopping still sitting by the recycling bin. Everything so normal it hurt. Through the window, I could see Linda moving around the kitchen, probably starting dinner. Wednesday was usually chicken casserole night. I should have stormed in, thrown the evidence on the counter, demanded explanations. That's what they do in movies. Instead, I quietly slipped the jacket on a hook by the door, pocketed Linda's credit card, and walked inside like it was any other day. "Hey, you're late," Linda said, not turning from the stove. She was stirring something that smelled like garlic and herbs, not chicken casserole. "I tried calling you." My phone had died at work. I hadn't bothered charging it in the truck. "Battery's dead," I said, amazed at how normal my voice sounded. "What are you making?" "Smells good." "Just trying something new. That cooking show I like had this pasta recipe." I watched her, this woman I'd shared a bed with for over 3 decades, and tried to see if anything was different. Her hair was recently colored, covering the gray she'd been complaining about. New blouse, too. Had she been dressing nicer lately? Working later? Taking more care with her makeup? The signs had been there, but I hadn't been looking for them. "How was work?" I asked, settling into my usual chair at the kitchen table. "Busy. Dr. Feldman took on too many patients again. You know how he gets—" The lie rolled off her tongue so easily. Had there been other lies I'd swallowed without question? "How about you?" "Fix the world's electricity problems today." She smiled, finally turning to look at me, and for a second she was just my Linda again. "Worked on the Carson building. Big job." I paused. "Actually met an interesting guy there. Financial advisor type. Mentioned something about investment opportunities." Her wooden spoon hesitated for just a millisecond. "Oh? Anyone I might know?" "Don't think so. Guy named Douglas. Mark Douglas, I think." The spoon clattered against the pot rim. Just a small sound. "Sorry," she laughed. "Clumsy tonight. No, doesn't ring a bell." Another lie. My dinner sat like acid in my stomach that night as I made plans to discover just how deep this went. I waited until Linda was in the shower the next morning to examine the jacket more thoroughly. Designer label, size 42. I'm a 40. In the inside pocket I found a business card. Mark Douglas, Senior Investment Advisor, Pinnacle Wealth Management. A different phone number than the one on the note. This would be his office line. The back of the card had something handwritten. Executive gym access, 5 to 7 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. My gym, my time slot. Different locker room, though. I used the standard one, not the executive section with its fancy amenities and private lockers. I slipped the card back and returned the jacket to the hook just as the shower stopped. Linda hummed as she got ready, something she hadn't done in years. She seemed lighter, happier. It made me feel hollow. "Working late again tonight?" I asked casually over coffee. "Mm-hmm. Quarter-end insurance processing. Might be very late, actually. Don't wait up." I nodded like this was perfectly normal, though in 30 years at the dental office I'd never heard of quarter-end insurance processing, requiring late nights. After she left, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. My crew could handle the Carson job without me for a day. I had work of a different kind to do. First, I searched Mark Douglas online. Pinnacle Wealth Management's website showed him front and center. Handsome guy, maybe mid-40s, confident smile, testimonials from grateful clients. The kind of man who wore tailored suits and drove German cars. Then I checked our bank accounts and credit card statements. Nothing immediately suspicious in our joint accounts, but Linda had her own credit card, the platinum one I'd found. I didn't usually look at those statements. It didn't take long to find the pattern once I knew what I was looking for. Castellanos wasn't a one-time thing. There were charges for restaurants, hotels, boutiques, places we'd never gone together, 32 years of marriage, and I was only now discovering I didn't know my wife at all. I've never considered myself a vengeful man, patient, methodical, maybe even plotting. That's what Linda called me once, not unkindly. "You're like a turtle, Frank, slow and steady." Was that when she started looking elsewhere, for someone faster, more exciting? The thought burned, but I tamped it down. I needed clarity, not emotion, not yet. I dialed the number from the note using *67 to block my caller ID, heart pounding as it rang. "Hello?" A male voice, confident, smooth. I said nothing, just breathed. "Linda, is that you? Reception's terrible." He paused. "Still on for tomorrow night? I've missed you this week." I hung up, hands shaking so badly I dropped the phone. There it was. Confirmation in his familiar tone, in the easy way he said her name, the casual mention of missing her. The plans already made for tomorrow night, when she'd told me she had a dental conference in Springfield. I poured myself 2 fingers of the whiskey I save for special occasions. This qualified, didn't it? Finding out your life partner, your best friend, your supposed forever, was a lie? After the initial shock came a strange calm, almost clinical. What would I do with this information? Confront her? Divorce her immediately? Each option felt both right and wrong. No, I needed more. Proof she couldn't deny or explain away. And I needed to understand the full scope of the betrayal. I checked the time. 11:30 a.m. Castellanos would be preparing for lunch service. I showered, dressed in my one good suit, the one I wear to funerals and weddings, and drove downtown. The restaurant was all polished brass and white tablecloths. I felt out of place but squared my shoulders and approached the maitre d'. "I believe I left my credit card here 2 nights ago. I was dining with my wife." I pulled out the receipt I'd found in the jacket, now carefully folded in my wallet. "Is there any way you could check?" "Of course, sir." He examined the receipt. "Ah, Mr. Douglas, no card was turned in, but let me check with your server from that evening." "Mr. Douglas." I didn't correct him. The server who appeared was young, early 20s, with an eager smile. "Mr. Douglas, good to see you again. No credit card was turned in, but is there anything else I can help with?" I hesitated, then took a chance. Actually, my wife thought she might have left something else here. A scarf, maybe? "Mrs. Douglas did have a scarf, but she had it when you both left." He smiled. "You were in your usual booth? Table 12. Usual booth? This wasn't just an affair. This was a routine. "My wife enjoys coming here," I said carefully. "She mentioned a special dessert?" "The chocolate souffle. You both ordered it Tuesday night. It's what you always get." Always. The word stabbed me. "Just one more thing," I said. "We were discussing an important moment that night with our server. A lie? But I needed more." "My wife and I remember it differently. Security footage might clear it up. For a personal anniversary video I'm making her." He hesitated. "That's not really—" I pulled out 3 20s. Not subtle, but effective. "I'll see what I can do," he said, taking the money. "Wait in the bar." 30 minutes and 1 overpriced club soda later, he returned with a USB drive. "Just don't tell anyone where you got this. It's against policy." "Our secret," I promised. Another $60 changed hands. Back in my truck, I plugged the drive into my laptop. There they were, Linda and Mark Douglas at table 12. The timestamp matched the receipt. I watched their entire evening unfold in sterile security camera footage. Linda wore a dress I'd never seen, hair styled differently than how she wore it at home. They sat close, leaned in toward each other. His hand covered hers on the table. At one point he brushed her hair from her face in a gesture so intimate it made me nauseous. Then something unexpected. He pulled out a small jewelry box. Even from the silent overhead angle, I could see Linda's expression change to surprise, then joy. She nodded enthusiastically, leaned across the table to kiss him. He slipped something onto her finger, a ring she wasn't wearing when she came home that night. Not just an affair, a future being planned. 32 years of marriage, and she was preparing to throw it all away. I sat in the parking lot for an hour, watching that footage loop. My emotions cycled: shock, grief, rage, numbness, then back again. But with each cycle, the rage portion grew, not hot and explosive, but cold, calculating, clarifying. By the time I pulled out of that parking lot, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The plan came together like a wiring diagram in my mind. Systematic, precise, every connection leading to the inevitable outcome. Linda had always underestimated me. "Predictable Frank," she'd say affectionately. Now that predictability would be my cover while I worked. First, I needed more evidence. I stopped at an electronics store and bought a voice recorder and a GPS tracker, both small enough to hide easily. The sales guy probably thought I was some jealous old fool. He wasn't entirely wrong. At home, I placed the recorder under the passenger seat of Linda's car and the tracker in her purse, in that little zippered pocket she never uses. Invasion of privacy? Sure. But what about the invasion of my life, my future, my truth? While setting up the recorder, I found a small velvet pouch tucked under the seat. Inside was the ring I'd seen in the video, platinum band, sizable diamond, emerald accents, Linda's birthstone. I photographed it, then returned it exactly as I'd found it. That evening, when Linda called to say she was still at the office, I played the perfect, unsuspecting husband. "Don't work too hard, honey. Love you." The words tasted like ash. I used the tracker app to watch her location, not at the dental office. At an address in Oakwood Heights, the upscale part of town. A quick property search showed the homeowner, Mark Douglas. I listened to the live audio feed from her car during her drive there, her calls to him, their conversations. Intimate details about their relationship, plans for their future, complaints about me. "Frank's a good man," she told Mark, "but we grew apart years ago. He'll be fine without me. Probably won't even notice I'm gone, except when there's no dinner waiting." The casual dismissal of 32 years together hit harder than any physical blow. In her mind, I was already an afterthought, a minor inconvenience to her happiness. I spent the night compiling everything, photos of the jacket and its contents, credit card statements, the restaurant footage, audio recordings, images of the ring. I created a detailed timeline of their relationship from the evidence I had, at least 6 months, possibly longer. For the final piece, I called my lawyer, Hal Brenner. We'd been friends since high school, though we didn't see each other much these days. "Frank? Everything okay?" He knew I wouldn't call at 7 a.m. unless it was important. "Need to see you today. Divorce paperwork." "Silence, then. I'll clear my morning." By noon, I had a folder containing divorce papers citing irreconcilable differences, with a USB drive of evidence attached. Everything legal, clean, undeniable. The jacket still hung by the door, waiting for its rightful owner. That evening, Linda came home earlier than usual. She seemed tense, distracted, checking her phone constantly. "Everything okay?" I asked, channeling the oblivious husband I was supposed to be. "Fine, just work stress." She poured herself a large glass of wine. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." Here it comes, I thought. The beginning of the end, her version of it anyway. "I've been thinking about taking some time off, maybe a solo trip to clear my head." "A trip?" I kept my voice neutral. "That sounds nice. Where are you thinking?" "Maybe up to the lake house, just for a week or two." She wouldn't meet my eyes. I could use some space to think through some things. The lake house, her sister's vacation property, rarely used in the off-season. Private, remote, perfect for romantic getaways. "Things like what?" I prodded gently. She sighed, swirling her wine. "Just life. Where I'm headed, where we're headed." "As a couple, you mean?" Her eyes flicked to me, surprised by my directness. "Yes, I guess so." I nodded thoughtfully. "Timing's not great for me to take off work, but maybe I could join you for a weekend?" "No," she said too quickly. "I really need this time alone, Frank." "Of course, I understand." I watched her relax slightly, relieved I wasn't fighting her. She had no idea what was coming. "When were you thinking of going?" "Tomorrow, actually. I've already cleared it with work." "I bet you have," I thought. "Well, if you need time, you should take it." I stood up and kissed her forehead. I want you to be happy, Linda. That's all I've ever wanted. For just a second, guilt flashed across her face. Good. Let her feel something. Thank you for understanding, she murmured. Of course. I squeezed her shoulder. I'm going to bed early. Got a big job tomorrow. Upstairs, I listened to her making calls she thought I couldn't hear. Confirming plans with Mark, discussing when they'd meet at the lake house, how they'd spend their 2 glorious weeks together. I set my own plan in motion, texting Hal. She's making her move tomorrow. We execute as discussed. Then I called Thompson's Fitness and asked for the executive locker room attendant. A discreet $100 donation to his service fund got me Mark's usual arrival time, 6:30 p.m., like clockwork. I fell asleep thinking about circuits, how one small break in the right place can shut down an entire system. Tomorrow, I would create that break. The next day unfolded like a slow-motion car crash I could see coming but couldn't stop. Didn't want to stop. Linda packed her solo retreat bag, kissed me goodbye with promises to call when she arrived safely. I hugged her back, telling her to take all the time she needed, such a considerate husband. After she left, I went to work, focused on the Carson building's complex wiring issues to keep my mind sharp. At 5:30, I clocked out and drove straight to Thompson's Fitness. The executive locker room was accessed by key card. I waited outside until a member entered, then caught the door before it closed. Just another middle-aged guy in gym clothes. Inside, the luxury was obvious. Wood paneling, plush carpeting, actual towel service. This was how the other half lived, how Mark Douglas lived. I located his usual locker from the attendant's information and positioned myself nearby, pretending to organize my gym bag on a bench. At 6:32, Mark strode in, tall, fit, designer workout gear. Exactly as he appeared online, but somehow more irritating in person. He didn't notice me watching as he changed. I waited until he was heading toward the gym floor before approaching. "Excuse me? Mark Douglas?" He turned, professional smile already forming. "Yes? Do I know you?" "No," I said pleasantly, "but I believe you have something of mine." His expression shifted to polite confusion. "I'm sorry? My wife?" I stepped closer. "Linda Mercer." The color drained from his face. His eyes darted toward the exit, calculating escape routes. "Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." I held up my phone, showing him the restaurant security footage. "You've been sleeping with my wife, planning a future with her, bought her quite a ring." "Listen." "No, you listen." My voice remained calm, controlled. "I'm not here to create a scene or throw punches. I'm not that guy." Relief flickered across his face. "What do you want? Money?" That made me laugh, a cold, bitter sound. "I'm not here to blackmail you, Mark. I'm here to return something." I pulled his jacket from my gym bag, held it out. "You left this at the gym, found Linda's credit card in the pocket, along with some other illuminating items." He stared at the jacket like it was a venomous snake. "Frank, look, I know this is difficult." "Difficult?" I interrupted. "No, rewiring a commercial building with outdated circuit breakers is difficult. This?" I gestured between us. "This is just sad. 2 grown adults sneaking around, lying, destroying a 32-year marriage." His confident facade cracked. "She was going to tell you. We didn't want to hurt you." "Bit late for that? But here's what's going to happen now." I stepped even closer, my voice dropping. "Linda's on her way to the lake house. You're supposed to join her tonight, right? Start your new life together?" He swallowed hard, but said nothing. "You should go," I continued. "She's expecting you, but when you get there, you'll find she has some unexpected paperwork waiting for her." "What paperwork?" Mark asked, tension visible in his jaw. "Divorce papers, already filed with the county clerk this morning." I enjoyed the flash of surprise in his eyes. along with a detailed accounting of your affair, backed by substantial evidence. The lake house has already received a special delivery." He shook his head slightly. "You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone again, showed him the courier service confirmation. "Delivery completed at 3:47 p.m. Signed for by Diane Miller. That's Linda's sister, right? The one who owns the lake house? Seemed surprised to learn about your little rendezvous plans." His face went from pale to ashen. "You didn't have to involve her family." "I didn't involve anyone. Your actions did." I met his gaze steadily. "The papers include a reasonable settlement division. I'm not looking to destroy Linda financially. But the prenup we signed has an infidelity clause. She won't be getting alimony." "This is between you and Linda," he said, finding some backbone. "Why confront me?" "Professional courtesy. I wanted you to understand what you're walking into tonight." I handed him his jacket. "You both made choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." He took the jacket reluctantly. "And if we don't go to the lake house?" "The papers will find her eventually, but I thought you deserved the chance to be there when she learns her carefully constructed plans have collapsed, to see if what you have is strong enough to survive the fallout." His expression hardened. "You don't know anything about what we have." "Maybe not. But I do know Linda still wears the wedding ring I gave her whenever she's with you. Check your anniversary dinner video, left hand under the table every time the server approaches. Old habits die hard. Makes me wonder what habits she'll hide from you." That landed. I could see doubt creeping into his expression. "You think you're the first? The only one?" I bluffed, watching his reaction carefully. The flicker of uncertainty told me everything. He hadn't considered that possibility. "You're just trying to cause problems," he said, but his confidence was cracking. "I'm not causing anything, just closing a chapter of my life with dignity." I zipped up my gym bag. "Enjoy the lake house. I hear the sunsets are beautiful this time of year." I walked away, leaving him standing there clutching his jacket. In the parking lot I saw his BMW, exactly the make that matched the key fob. On impulse I slid a final envelope under his windshield wiper, printouts of Linda's text messages to him complaining about his neediness and clingy behavior captured from my surveillance. Just a little insurance policy in case he was considering backing out of their lake house meeting. The best revenge would be for them to face each other amid the wreckage of their deception. As I drove away, I felt strangely calm. For the first time in days, I wasn't filled with rage or grief, just a sense of finality. Linda and Mark's relationship had been built on lies. Now they would have to face the truth, and each other, with nowhere to hide. Back home, I poured myself a drink and waited. The house felt different now, less like a sanctuary, more like a museum of a life that no longer existed. Our wedding photo on the mantel, the quilt Linda's mother had made us, 32 years of accumulated memories, suddenly foreign. My phone rang at 9:48 p.m. "Linda." I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately, then again, then started texting, "Frank, please pick up. We need to talk. This isn't how I wanted you to find out. It's not what you think." I silenced my phone and packed a bag. Clothes, toiletries, important documents I hadn't already secured. The house could wait. I owned it before our marriage, protected in the prenup. Linda would need to find somewhere else to live when she returned from her solo retreat. My phone buzzed again with a different notification, the tracker app. Mark's BMW was now at the lake house. Good. They were together, facing the music. I slept at a motel that night, my first night away from our bed in years. Sleep came surprisingly easily, like my body knew a weight had been lifted. In the morning, I had 7 missed calls from Linda, 3 from her sister Diane, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize. Probably Mark. I ignored them all and headed to the one place I'd always found peace. Cherry Creek, my favorite fishing spot upstate. The 3-hour drive was therapeutic, windows down despite the October chill, radio playing classic rock I hadn't listened to in years. Linda preferred soft jazz or talk radio. Today, Led Zeppelin kept me company, a small reclaiming of self. I'd called my foreman from the road requesting a week off for personal matters. He didn't ask questions. In 30 years, I'd never taken unexpected leave. At Cherry Creek, I rented my usual cabin, the small one overlooking the water. I unpacked my fishing gear and sat on the porch, watching the sun sparkle on the lake. Here, with no one around for miles, I finally allowed myself to truly feel everything. The betrayal, the loss, the anger, the strange relief. I hadn't realized how exhausting it had been, maintaining our life together while she was mentally already gone. For the next 3 days, I fished from dawn until dusk, losing myself in the rhythm of casting and reeling, the patient waiting that had always centered me. The lake offered no judgments, no betrayals, just the honest challenge of outwitting the bass and pike that lurked beneath its surface. On the 4th day, Hal called. I'd given my lawyer permission to update me when necessary. "Linda's contesting the prenup," he said without preamble. "Claims the infidelity evidence was obtained illegally." "Was it?" I asked, watching an osprey circle above the water. "Gray area. We'll argue you found evidence accidentally, the jacket swap, and had reasonable cause for the rest." He paused. "Her lawyer's pushing for mediation, wants to keep this quiet." "Her reputation at stake?" "More likely her boyfriend's. Pinnacle Wealth Management is pretty image-conscious. Been some rumblings he might lose clients over this." I considered this. "What's your advice?" "Take the mediation. You've got leverage. The prenup is solid. We just need to negotiate the details. Unless you want a public fight?" I didn't. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to destroy Linda completely. 32 years leaves its mark, even when it ends badly. "Set it up," I told him, "but I'm staying here for a few more days. My mind's clearer up here." After hanging up, I thought about what Linda might be experiencing now, her perfect escape plan in shambles, the new life she'd envisioned complicated by reality. Was Mark standing by her through this mess? Or was he already regretting getting involved with a married woman? That evening, I met an older man at the lake, fishing a few yards down the shore. Walter, 70s at least, had been coming to Cherry Creek for 50 years. We got to talking as the sun set. "Marriage ended last week," I admitted, when he asked why I was alone. He nodded thoughtfully. "Mine ended 30 years ago. Same reason? She found someone else." "Ah." He cast his line with practiced precision. "Hurts like hell now. Won't always." Simple words, but they landed right where I needed them. That night, I deleted the tracker app from my phone. Linda's whereabouts were no longer my concern. I returned home a week after I'd left. The house was empty, with signs of Linda's visit. Missing clothes, her favorite mug gone, her bathroom counter cleared. She'd taken what she needed and left. I was relieved. The mediation was the following Monday. Linda was already there with her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s. No sign of Mark. Linda looked smaller somehow, diminished, dark circles under her eyes, hair less perfect than usual. The process was surprisingly civil. The prenup held firm. The house remained mine. No alimony given the infidelity. We divided our accounts according to the agreed percentages. Linda didn't fight for anything beyond what was legally hers. When it concluded, her lawyer left us alone briefly. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Doesn't matter now," I replied. "Mark and it's over." After everything came out, he decided it was too complicated. I nodded, unsurprised. "And the ring?" "You knew about that too." "I knew everything, Linda. That's what you never understood." She looked down at her bare hands. 32 years? Was any of it real? All of it was real, including the end. 6 months later, the divorce was final. I sold the house and bought a small place near Cherry Creek, took early retirement and started consulting, made fishing a regular part of my life. Yesterday, I ran into Diane at the grocery store. She told me Linda had moved to Arizona. She misses you, Diane said. Regrets everything. Driving home, I caught sight of myself in the rearview mirror. There were new lines around my eyes, more gray in my hair. But there was something else, a clarity I hadn't seen in years. Some might call what I did revenge. I call it justice. Not the punishment of Linda and Mark, but the reclaiming of my dignity. The jacket that wasn't mine had revealed a truth I needed, that I deserved better than a life built on lies.